Here, would you please call the roll?
Stephen Yerger.
Here.
Mary Brennan. Here. Janelle Ressler.
Here.
Nick Lovett.
Here. Please rise for the pledge of allegiance and a moment of silence.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
All right, there's no public comment tonight, so I'll turn it over to Dr. Barrett.
We are going to start this evening with a review of data. So each year we come to you and we share some updated data that we receive from the state through PSSAs, and then also with bringing iReady into the district this year, we now have our fall diagnostic and our winter diagnostic, and I'll be able to show you how our students have been growing K to 8 so far this year. So we'll take a look at that. Just for the record, since this was kind of a before the meeting kind of comment, we will have one more diagnostic yet later this year, so then we can come back and look at where we were in the fall, where we were in the winter, and where our kids ended up at the end of the school year. And then around this time next year, we'll be able to take a look at those 3 sets of data, our new PSSA data, and then where we are with our current reality next year as far as growing kids with iReady. So that kind of helps set the stage of where the data is coming from. So when we heard from the board, Tim and I, back in June, I guess it was, that we are remaining with our focus on academics and attendance. And some of this came out of the comprehensive planning last year through the steering committee. Janelle and Nick were both on that committee, and we took a look at a lot of data, the PSSA, the Keystone, last year's Future Ready, and some other data sets. And through that, it came out that academics and attendance are definitely an area of focus where we need to be putting a lot of our attention. So one of the things that Tim had started when he came to the district were the proficiency scales. And just as a reminder, that is our written curriculum. So proficiency scales are what kids need to be able to know and do at a certain level for each standard or eligible content in like given subject areas and grade level. And then, so what we're also working on this year is we have a number of departments who have written their proficiency scales or grade levels who are now starting to work on those common assessments. With common assessments, it is very much where, let's say Mary and I both teach 4th grade math. At the end of a 4th grade unit on, let's just say we're doing decimals, we are both giving that same assessment. So it doesn't matter if the kids are in my classroom or Mary's classroom, they are receiving that same assessment so that we can see if kids are proficient in that content area, what we taught well, maybe what the kids still haven't gotten that we need to do some intervention or some teaching for. So the common assessments across curriculum, every grade level, every content area is key because kids should not get a different experience in our 2 classrooms and be held to 2 different academic standards when they should all be on 4th grade material, learning 4th grade content and being assessed on 4th grade content. And then iReady really helps to either help shore up some of those gaps if kids aren't quite on the 4th grade level, or if I'm doing well in 4th grade, it'll help push me toward that advanced or higher proficiency. And we'll see some of that in iReady data. One of the things we talked about a lot this year, and you'll see this a little later as well, is we have to make sure that what we're teaching, like our instructional level and our resources and our assessments, are all at the right rigor level. So if we teach, and I'm going to use some educational jargon, and I try not to do that, but I'll explain it as I do it. So if we teach at what we call a depth of knowledge 1, so that's like recall. If I ask you if you know what exaggerate means, you either do or you don't, but it's still an easy question, right? If I taught you what exaggerate means, you should know that's a simple recall question, so that's a level 1. And there is a time and place for level 1, but most of our instruction and our assessments need to be at a level 2. So when we talk about level 2 assessments and rigor, we're talking about, can they do multi-step problems? Can they explain how they did the multi-step problems? You can give kids math problems or even a piece of written work to analyze and come up with multiple answers that can be correct. So, I should have put this up here, but I'll give you an example. If I put a V up and put 3 dots, so 2 here with the center and 2 here with the center, and said that you need to make this arm equal this arm, and asked you to work on that for a couple minutes, you would come up with an answer. And some of you would come up with an answer, well, if I added this down and this down, I got 10. Some of you would say you got 8. Some of you would say 9. And guess what? You would all be right. But part of that exercise, you guys are probably going to go home and try this now. You're thinking. Part of the exercise is, if I'm the kid that got 10 and Mary got 8, and I explain how I did my math reasoning and how I came up with my answer, and Mary shares hers and how she came up with her answer, and then we ask each other, does that answer make sense? What was your thought process? That's a level 2, level 3. Because now they're doing multiple steps, they have to be able to explain what they did and how they achieved that answer, and determine if each other's answers are correct. And by the way, 8, 9, and 10 are all correct answers, correct? And then we also are taking a look at our attendance. That was a focus because we did start to see where across the state, and honestly across the United States, attendance in school is going down. So what processes are we using in our child study team, which happens at every building level, to identify the kids who are struggling with attendance or chronically absent? How often are we getting them to prepare in conferences? We also have in our management system, which is Sapphire, that some of you know from checking the students with your kids' grades and stuff. We can actually pull reports out of there through an early warning system that'll help us track if kids are starting to fall behind in attendance. Because really, kids should not miss more than 10% of the school year. So you figure 180 days, students should not be missing a whole lot of school. And then what resources are we able to provide for our families to help combat some of those attendance issues? So this should not be a surprise to you because PSSA data has been out for a while. But if you are taking a look at this, grade 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, the number in parentheses is what we are down or up compared to last year's PSSA. Okay, and then the bottom line is, so grades 3, 4, and 5, when we get future ready scores, come out as one overall score. So for that, for us, for ELA, it was 45.7, and then behind that, you will see the PA average right now is at 53.9 for ELA. So you'll see in ELA, across the board, grade 3 through 8, except their grade wrote even, we were at a deficit last year. We lost ground.
Is that percentages?
Yeah. Yeah, these are all percents, sorry. Math, you will see that grade 4 saw a 4% increase, and grade 7 saw a 3% increase, and grade 8 held steady. We actually had last year that we were at 18 and this year at 19, but the state had it basically as a wash and even. So there is no way to sugarcoat, like our scores are not great. Comparing them across the county, I'm just going to stick with 3 through 8 for a minute. We are either 5th or 6th in the county throughout all of that, including science. So we're either 5th or 6th in Adams County. When you go down to algebra, bio, and lit, you will see that Also, literature had a decrease of 17%. Algebra and bio both also went down. And then below that, you can see the state average. So in Pennsylvania right now for algebra, the state average is 40.2%. We're at 63%. And even though we're still above the state average, we have to take a look at that decline. Biology, same. We are at 75%, and Pennsylvania is at 59.2%. And then literature, you can see that we are at 69%, and the state is at 60%. And then across the county, we are first in math and first in science and second in literature. For those three. So we have our work cut out for us. You know, we saw some gains in 7th grade math, which is great. We saw some great gains in 4th grade math, which is good. But we need to realize some more gains across the board. Now, I do want to preemptively remind you that this year, 5th grade is having a pilot and 8th grade is having a pilot in science. So next year, when we come back together to look at science data, we won't have real data to share. It'll be kind of a baseline reset year. So we won't be comparing apples to apples. It'll be a brand new test. So I just wanted to mention that. Go on. Okay. So this is the current iReady data. And I apologize, you can't really see some of the numbers in the center there. The lighter triangle is our data from the fall, and the darker triangle is our data from the winter. So when we take a look at in education, we talk about 3 tiers. So tier 1 is the bottom, your green at the bottom. That is where 85% of your kids should be. So I handed to the committee members a triangle chart, a pyramid, sorry. So when we're talking tier 1, 80 to 85% of your kids should be here. However, 100% of our kids receive the core-based instruction in tier 1. So this is every kid in 4th grade is getting 4th grade curriculum, being assessed at the 4th grade level, engaging in 4th grade material. Okay, so that is tier 1. So when you take a look at this, you'll see, and I'll just do the reading for ACEs right now. At the beginning of the year, diagnostic and iReady, when they took it, we had only 28% of our kids, and this is all of ACEs, so K to 5, all of our kids, only 28% of them were in tier 1. So if you look at that triangle that I gave you, 80 to 85% of our kids should be in tier 1, okay? Then when you see our second one, we are up to 51% of our kids being in tier 1. And then when you go up to tier 2, these are students who are getting all of the core, so everything in tier 1, and some additional support. So maybe they're getting math intervention, maybe they are in small group, you know, getting pulled out for reading intervention or math intervention or some small group learning support. So that's the tier 2. At the beginning of the year we had, and again, these don't necessarily correlate, I just need to be careful because it doesn't mean that every kid who scored here in tier 2 is a learning support kid or being pulled out right now, okay? So I just want to be careful when I say that. So tier 2, we had 48% of our kids in tier 2 at the beginning of the year, and that has been minimized down to 32%. And then in tier 3, which means they're at risk, this means that there are 2 or more grade levels behind. So if they're a 4th grader, they're performing at 2nd or below. A 2nd grader is going to be performing at pre-K or 1 or kindergarten. So the red is 2 or more grade levels below. So at the beginning of the year, we had 24% of our kids performing at least 2 grade levels below, and now currently we're at 17%. So you can see there's some nice gains there. Going over to math, same, beginning of the year, we started students, the green being on grade level at, we were at 18%, we're up to 41%. So that's a huge gain. We had 58% of our students, the yellow is like a grade level behind or emerging grade level. So they were at 58% and now they're down to 47. And tier 3 went from 25% to 12%. So that's at ACES. So they are making some really good gains.
Would this include special ed versus?
This is everybody. Everybody K to 5.
And what percent, percentage of the elementary school special ed or
No, we're below. That's the number I have to bring back to you. But their numbers are also good. So they are also on my ready. So next question, if you didn't hear, was what percent of our population at ACES is learning support? And I can bring that number back on Monday, but they are also, every student who was at ACES that was not absent during the time of the diagnostic is diagnosed.
do they make a?
They do. So you could have move-ins, you could have extended absences, you could have families that go on vacation during the school year. So there could be a number of reasons. It also took us a while to get the winter one in because of the holiday and then the snow. So we were actually, I was still pulling data at the end of last week to try to get the most current data as we could. So I'm going to go over typical growth and stretch growth goals because you're going to see in the next couple of slides why that's important. So after the initial diagnostic, every student who took the diagnostic gets what is called a typical growth goal and a stretch growth goal. So the typical growth goal is the annual growth that they should get at each grade level and their placement level. So based on where they performed on that initial diagnostic, then they've been working on iReady lessons and different assessments in there to help progress them along their grade level and to push them more toward what would then be a stretch goal. But before I go to the stretch growth goal, so typical growth by this time of the school year, kids should be realizing 50% or more of their target for the year. So it doesn't mean from the beginning of the year till now they should be at 100%. It means from the beginning of the year to now they should be at least at 50% or more toward their typical growth goal. So that means you're maintaining your learning. You're not losing any ground. You're working toward and maintaining your proficiency. The stretch growth goal, so if I'm a student, when we show the red, or even the yellow, if I'm a grade level or 2 grade levels behind, this stretch growth goal is set to try to help me catch up with the curriculum or the learning gaps that I have. So if I have, and every kid gets a stretch growth goal as well. So that's recommended, and the lessons are on their personalized pathway on iReady to get the kids to grade level to decrease the deficiencies in their learning. And we're going to take a look at some of these so it'll make a little bit more sense. And then the stretch growth goal is they make their typical growth and then they keep going to try to stretch. So now if I'm a kid that's 2 or more years behind grade level, I'm not going to make that up in all 1 year. So I might see some movement, I will see some movement in my my learning, but I'm still going to have some